Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
It had been another long day. Once again, my team and I worked late into the night. Crunch time was always like this, and as the lead programmer, I had to be there through every minute of it. More often than not, I'd be the last one to leave the office, as I was tonight. After setting the security system, I left the building, walked across the parking lot to my Navy Audi RS5 coupe, and began the short drive home. My mind was still processing the progress we'd made on the project. After a week of declining bug numbers, we were finally getting somewhere. Sure, there were still hundreds to fix, but the rate of discovery was slowing, and my team was keeping up with the fixes. Another 2 weeks, and we'd have a gold master to send off. Halfway to my car, I realized I wasn't alone. I heard the sound of footsteps approaching quickly. Distracted by my thoughts about the project, I hadn't turned on my music, which would have drowned out the sound of someone following me. I turned to see who it was, but all I saw was a gun pointed straight at me. Instinctively, I ducked, but before I could react further, the gun flashed. The bullet tore through my body just above my heart, shattering the bones in my shoulder. I fell backward, hitting my head on the trunk of the car behind me, then slid down into a sitting position, staring up at the shooter, whose figure was framed by the streetlights around the parking lot. The gun flashed again /U 2014, or maybe it was several guns going off. Everything blurred together. I felt the bullet slam into my lowest rib on the same side. My vision was fading, and I struggled to keep my eyes open as the shooter stepped closer. I knew it was the end. I hoped Emily, my wife, and Ava, my daughter, would forgive me for not being there for them. I regretted the years I spent working through countless crunch times instead of being with my family. Voices shouted from somewhere in the distance /U 2014, familiar voices that I couldn't quite place. It didn't matter. The gun fired once more, biting into my left leg. Then I watched as the shooter turned and ran away. Moments later, I felt a familiar face lean over me. Grace, our graphic designer, appeared and spoke to me, though I couldn't hear her. Then I saw Jason, our assistant producer, and Connor, the AI programmer, both of whom looked down at me with concern. As the world began to blur and fade, I fought to stay awake, focusing on Grace's face until I could no longer keep my eyes open. The next thing I knew, I was looking into the eyes of someone I didn't know, feeling a searing pain in my chest. As everything faded to black again, I saw the paddles in his hands. I had died, but somehow he had brought me back. Waking up, the first thing I felt was pain. Not the intense agony from before, but still enough to make my body ache. I opened my eyes and saw the source. A nurse was holding my leg, flexing it back and forth, working out the muscles in the leg that had been shot. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, and all that came out was a scratchy grunt. The nurse quickly dropped my leg onto the bed and looked at me as she noticed my eyes. Hours passed. The doctors had seen me, nurses gave me ice chips, and slowly I began to feel better. At least I could talk again, but my strength was gone. Took everything I had just to lift my arm, let alone do anything else. At least I was alive. I learned that I'd been in this long-term facility for 8 months. My only visitor had been Ava, but she hadn't come by in 4 months. Her phone number was the one on record as my next of kin. They couldn't tell me anything about Emily or the circumstances of my shooting. The notes on my file also requested that the police be contacted upon my waking, and sure enough, they were my first visitors. "Mr. Andrew Callahan?" asked the older of the two detectives. I nodded. He introduced himself as Detective Richard Hayes with his partner Marco Bianchi, and asked if I could answer a few questions about my shooting. I agreed and recounted what I remembered of that night. Once that was over, the questions took an unexpected turn. "Mr. Callahan, how long had you suspected your wife of having an affair?" Detective Bianchi asked, drawing a sharp look from his partner. I sputtered. "Having an affair? What are you talking about? Where's my wife?" "She's not having an affair with anyone." "I apologize for my partner's question," Hayes interjected, "but I regret to inform you that she was indeed having an affair /U 2014 with Ryan Klein." "Do you know him? Emily having an affair?" It made no sense. She was my whole world, especially after Ava was born, and I had been hers. It had always been the three of us. I worked so hard for them so they could have everything they wanted. I couldn't wrap my head around the idea of her having an affair. The name Ryan Klein was familiar, but I couldn't place him immediately. Then it clicked. He was Ava's middle school English teacher. Yes, that's how we think they met, Hayes confirmed. Did you know he lost that job? I shook my head. No. He started an affair with an 18-year-old at the high school, Hayes continued. It broke school district rules, but not the law. He lost his job and struggled to find another teaching position. Eventually, his father passed away, and he ended up running the local coffee shop /U 2014 Summit Grounds. Summit Grounds, I said, thinking about the place Emily loved to get her coffee from. Yes, Hayes replied. We think this is where your wife and Klein met again. That would be right. She loved the coffee in that place. I'd rather drink sewer water, though. I'd say that's the opinion of most of the town. He barely broke even, we discovered. I still don't believe my wife was having an affair with this man. I can see how they would see each other regularly /U 2014. She would go there often /U 2014, but an affair seems like a big stretch to me. Okay, let's try another line of questioning and we'll come back to that. Does your house have a security system? Yes. What kind of system? Features. Basic stuff, really. Alarms on the garage, front and back doors, motion detectors in the downstairs rooms, all with a direct connection to the alarm company we use. No cameras. No. I didn't like the idea of them having a record of my life sitting on their servers. Too many security breaches with these internet companies to feel safe. Why? Did you install any cameras yourself? No. The only cameras in the house would be my digital SLR camera and the ones built into our laptops. Again, why are you asking? There are cameras throughout your house. We recovered a DVR system hidden in the basement that had recorded nearly a month's worth of footage leading up to your shooting. Who put them there? We and your daughter assumed it had been you /U 2014 that you suspected your wife was having an affair. She couldn't figure out how you knew, though. She didn't suspect? I didn't either until you told me. I thought my wife loved me as much as I loved her. It wasn't me. So who was it? And what did you find? Proof of the affair. Proof that your wife and her lover planned the attack on you. Phone records showed that you called your wife about half an hour before you left your office. Immediately after that call, she called Mr. Klein. From the video we have, it was to inform him you'd be finishing up at work soon /U 2014 to get down there. Hell. She wanted me dead. Why? You have videos of her with him? Images of my wife with another man /U 2014 with that weasel of a teacher /U 2014 ran through my head. I felt nauseous. I also felt anger. She was willing to kill me for him. For my /U 2014 are /U 2014 things. She saw more worth in them than in my life. My love for her died with that realization. She had convinced herself that you were having an affair as well, and she wanted to take everything /U 2014, everything from the marriage /U 2014, including the $1.5 million life insurance policy she had on you. Life insurance policy? He couldn't mean my work one. I'm not sure I even mentioned that to her, but I don't remember signing any paperwork for one recently. What life insurance policy? The one you took out nearly 2 years ago, he told me. 2 years. Just how long had her affair been going on? My stomach lurched again. It didn't matter. She did it. She's dead to me, or she should be dead to me. I don't remember doing that. I have one through work. I think that's worth 2 years' salary on my base /U 2014, no bonuses. That's $240,000. We found that out as well, he replied. Okay. So where is Emily and her lover? And do you know how long they've been together? For the first question, the earliest we can track it is 6 months before you got shot /U 2014, so 6 or 7 months, probably not longer. But the life insurance policy was 2 years old. Did that mean there were others? Or did that mean the life insurance was something she set up for her and Ava should something happen to me? I wonder if she would clear that up for me /U 2014, tell me how long, how many affairs she'd had. But first, I need to know where she is. Your wife was very nervous when we interviewed her. Nervous enough that she became the prime suspect. When we got her phone records and discovered she'd been talking a lot to Mr. Klein /U 2014, including the night of the shooting /U 2014, we interviewed her again. This time at the station. We also brought in Mr. Klein. Their stories matched a little too well, but we had no evidence yet to link them conclusively to the attack on you. So you let them go. We did, and we planned to have them followed. However, they took off straight from the station. Mr. Klein managed to escape to Mexico. He shot himself rather than allow himself to be arrested and deported. He left a confession. And my wife? Was my wife with him? She hasn't been seen since she left the station that day. We don't know where she is. You're still looking for her? Yes. But there hasn't been a sighting of her in all this time. No accessing her funds. Nothing from her phone. No relatives are admitting to having contact with her. She just vanished. My daughter. Do you know where Ava is? She hasn't come to see me for a while. I'm told she hasn't heard from her either. As for where she is, she moved out west for university. I'll check with the nurse on the desk to make sure they have that contact information. My guess is they do, but it will take her time to arrange a flight home. Out west. I wondered. She had talked about going to the University of Oregon. It had been where her grandfather /U 2014 my dad /U 2014 had gone, and where I had intended to go until life happened. I put together a game and sold it. That led to a job offer. Just for a year, I told myself and my parents. We finished that game and it sold really well. My royalties off that game would have paid for my studies twice over. But instead, I rolled into another game based on an idea I pitched. My parents tried to get me to go to university before it was too late, but I couldn't leave my baby behind. I wanted to see my game across the finish line. 2 years later, we finished the game. I met Emily and Ava was on the way. Marriage followed, and university didn't seem so important anymore. Well, for me, at least. Emily went back and finished her computer science degree. We'd met when I had been volunteered to give a speech on game development at her university. I wish now that I'd listened to my parents and gone back to university. No, that wasn't true because then I wouldn't have Ava. All the pain in the world was worth it to have her in my life. Did her boyfriend go with her? Do you know? Please tell me he didn't. Boyfriend? Yes, her boyfriend, Evan Carter. I don't know. His name hasn't come up in the investigation. Surely they would have talked to him. Ava seemed to spend every moment she could with him. I kept quiet about my dislike for him. Emily had thought him harmless /U 2014 a phase, and not to worry. But maybe if they didn't talk to him, then it had been a phase and she'd gotten over him before all this happened. I just hadn't noticed, wrapped up in overtime and the rush to get the game done. I guess I have to wait and ask her then. Seems that would be best. So, I guess you guys have 2 mysteries to solve now, maybe 3. How so? Hayes asked. 1. Find out what happened to my wife. 2. Who put the cameras in my house. And 3. What happened with Evan Carter. Hayes laughed lightly. That last one is for you, I think. But yes, we need answers now to the first 2. We'll be in touch, Mr. Callahan. New beginnings the next morning. They transferred me from the long-term care facility for coma patients back to the hospital to begin my rehab. The nurses seemed happy about that. It seemed most of their patients usually left in a wooden box. Waiting at the nurses' station on the ward they took me to was my daughter, Ava. Tears rolled down her face as she saw me coming in. Her face told of joy at seeing me and disbelief at seeing me actually awake and alert again. Finally, the joy won out, and she rushed over to me. She kissed my cheek, held my hand, and told me how happy seeing me awake made her feel. A nurse had her return to the station while they got me situated in my room. Seeing her alone drove home that the detectives hadn't lied to me, that Emily had had an affair and that she and her lover had planned to kill me. Up until seeing Ava, I had drifted back into believing they'd gotten it wrong somehow, that finding Emily would clear it all up, and we'd be together, a loving couple again, with an amazing daughter as proof of that love. How have you been? I asked as soon as Ava entered the room. Okay, I guess. I didn't take the shortcut to hear that you did. I lived through the year. You just took a nap. The worst part? She added, grinning. Being Sleeping Beauty for a year didn't help you in the looks department. I laughed. My first one since I had woken up. How are you, really? How have you coped with everything? Good, Dad. Really, it's you that should be answering the how are you question, not me. As for how I've coped with everything, well, Grace from your office helped the most. She moved in with me at the house and basically got me through Thanksgiving and Christmas last year. Then she was there for graduation and helped get me to university. She fought social services to become my legal guardian, and her paying rent to live in the house is what kept the bills paid. She really came through for me. For us, in a big way. I always liked Grace. I'm glad you had someone there for you. What happened to Evan? Ava's face soured at the mention of him. He didn't like me spending time at the hospital instead of with him. He kept pestering me to use the empty house as our time to get together. Then, a week after you got shot, he was gone. Never heard from him again. His best friend told me he lost his job and moved back in with his parents. But I know that's a lie. His parents died years ago. He lived with his grandmother until he graduated, then got his own apartment. I nodded at her words. My feelings toward Evan validated. I asked about him weeks later at the Staples he worked at. Ava continued. The manager told me Evan just phoned in one day and said he wasn't coming back. Total loser. You're so much better off without him. Why didn't you tell me that at the time? Mom convinced me that if I said anything, you'd get attached to him just to spite her. Screw that. I wasted too much time with that loser. Next time, tell me you don't like someone. Okay? I nodded. Sure. No, I mean it, Dad. Mom. She's... Ava trailed off, her face darkening. I bet she liked losers like him. I want your opinion, good or bad. Please. I will, honey. So, is there anyone new in your life? Not really. There is one that might be something. He just got the courage to talk to me. But then I got a call and had to jump on a plane. When I go back, we'll see where it leads /U 2014 or if anything happens at all. What are you studying? I asked. Computers. I like the building engineering side of it, though /U 2014 not what you do. I built a digital scale. Just a pressure sensor and 3 LEDs to show the number, but it worked first time, too. I smiled at that, then soured at the memory of Emily. Her mother had excelled at school, too, and hearing Ava talk brought back memories of Emily coming home to share her successes. What's wrong, Dad? Ava asked, concern painting her face. Just old memories, honey. Of that, of a mother of mine? She spat. I nodded. Yes, she did well at school, too. I think you get your smarts from her. I get nothing from her, Dad. You're the smartest person I know. If I got my smarts from anyone, it's you. The only thing that woman is good for is rotting in hell. What happened after I was shot? Or is this all from finding out she tried to kill me? Well, her trying to kill you is enough, Ava replied. But between when you got shot and when she disappeared, she changed. She changed a lot. The first week or so, she was the doting wife and mother, spending every waking moment at the hospital /U 2014 except for school. I was there with her, so I know. We ate at the hospital, I did homework at the hospital. She slept at the hospital too /U 2014 sending me home, so I had fresh clothes and could shower for school the next day. When you didn't wake up after that first week, she changed. She dressed more revealing, would say she was going to the hospital, but frequently I'd show up after school, and she wouldn't be there. The police started interviewing everyone close to you. Grace told me they began with everyone at work, your friends from your Saturday morning pickup soccer game, and finally they got to me. Then Mom. After they talked to her, she seemed on edge, always looking over her shoulder. She wouldn't drive the same way anywhere twice in a row. That made me late for school a couple of times when she convinced herself she was being followed. Ava sighed, looking around the room before continuing. When the police asked her to come in for a follow-up interview, she had trouble putting the phone back on the receiver because her hand shook so badly. Yet she still went after dropping me at school. I walked home that day. I thought she'd gone to the hospital after the police and lost track of time. But when she didn't come home, I started to worry. I called the hospital, and they told me you'd had no visitors that day. I had my laptop open, looking up the number for the local police station, when Grace called. She always called on nights she couldn't visit the hospital to see you back then. I told her Mom was missing, and she insisted on coming over to our house. She left work to come. I'm pretty sure she got a lot of heat for it. She slept in the spare bed that night, and together we went to the police station the next morning. The police came and searched the house. Grace stood there with me. They found those hidden cameras in a box in the basement, along with the storage device that recorded their contents. She told me. Ava paused, struggling to find the right words. I saved her from asking the unspoken question. I didn't install the cameras. I have no idea who did that. I wish I did. I wish they had warned me about what she planned, or warned me before about her affair. Did you know him? She asked. Ryan Klein. He was my teacher back in middle school, but I hadn't seen him since I moved up to high school. So the police found the videos and knew about Mom. What happened next? I asked. Well, they took away the storage device but didn't tell us what was on it. The detective on the case told us to call him immediately if she contacted me, then left. A uniformed policewoman told me they would notify social services and let them know I was alone. Grace stepped in then, saying, "She's not alone." Grace moved in that day. Your company managed to get a lawyer for her, and they dealt with social services. For days before I turned 18, social services didn't care anymore. They just gave Grace the paperwork to be my guardian for the next few days and kicked us out of the office. No counseling, no support. They just washed their hands of me. It was pathetic, Dad. I could feel her hurt and anger. Some of it was undoubtedly directed at social services, who should have been her safety net but abandoned her. But the deeper anger was from being cast off by her loving parents. She had been left to fend for herself, first by me, unintentionally due to the shooting, and then by her mother, who had fled rather than face the consequences of her actions. I'm sorry, honey. I wish I would have been there for you if I could. I told her, tears streaming down my face as guilt and regret consumed me. The thought of what Ava had endured cut deeper than any physical wound. "Oh, Daddy," she said, her own tears flowing now. "I know you'd have been there if you could. Knowing you fought to live, fought to come back to us, it helped. You didn't give up, Dad, so I couldn't give up either." She wiped her tears and continued. "Grace helped, though. She moved in, paid rent to ensure the bills got paid, saw me through the last of school, helped me pick a college, and even came out with me for orientation. I'm so glad you had someone to help," I said. "Where is Grace now?" "She's at work. She texted me earlier saying she'd come by in the evening. She went to see you when you were moved out of the long-term facility this morning." "Still living in the house?" "Yes, she checks up on you every week for me. I wouldn't have gone to Oregon if she hadn't agreed to that." "Honey, you needed to do what was right for you. If that school was the one for you, then you should go no matter what. Your grandfather would be proud you went to his alma mater. He always talked about wanting you to go there," she said with a soft smile. "But life got in the way, didn't it?" "It did," I admitted. "I put off university for work, for family. And honestly, I don't regret it, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have had you." Our conversation was interrupted when a doctor came in to examine me and review my progress. Afterward, he pulled Ava aside, likely to discuss my care plan and next steps. Left alone with my thoughts, I felt a wave of anger toward Emily for abandoning our daughter, for leaving her to fend for herself during such a turbulent time. But more than anger, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for Grace. She had stepped in, without hesitation, and cared for Ava when I couldn't. Her actions had ensured Ava was safe, supported, and able to thrive despite everything. Ava returned to the room, a thoughtful expression on her face. "The doctor says you're doing well, Dad. They think you'll be ready to start physical therapy tomorrow." "That's good," I said, though I wasn't looking forward to the challenge. "How long are you staying?" "I've got a week before I need to head back for classes," she replied. "I'll stay as long as I can." "I'm glad you're here," I said sincerely. "It's been too long." "I missed you too," Ava replied, her eyes softening. "I was so scared we'd never get to have this." Her words hit me hard, and I felt a surge of determination. I wasn't going to let the pain, the anger, or the guilt weigh me down. My daughter had fought through so much. The least I could do was be strong for her now. Later that evening, Grace came by as promised. She stepped into the room with a familiar warmth, her presence instantly lifting the atmosphere. "Mr. Callahan," she said teasingly, "you look better than the last time I saw you." "That's not saying much," I replied with a weak chuckle. She smiled, pulling up a chair next to Ava. "How are you feeling?" "Better now that I'm out of that facility," I admitted. "And thank you, Grace, for everything. Ava told me how much you've done for her, for us." Grace waved off my gratitude. "You don't need to thank me. Ava's family, and family looks out for each other." "Well, it means the world to me," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Grace stayed for a couple of hours, catching me up on the office, the game I had been working on before the shooting, and everything else I had missed. She and Ava exchanged knowing smiles and shared small inside jokes, a testament to how close they had grown over the past year. As the evening wore on, they both excused themselves, promising to return the next day. After they left, I found myself feeling something I hadn't in a long time: hope. The next day began with my first session of physical therapy. The therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, greeted me with a firm handshake and an encouraging smile. "This won't be easy," she said, helping me sit up. "But we'll take it one step at a time, literally." The first few sessions were grueling. My legs felt weak, my body uncooperative, and the pain was ever present. Still, with Carla's guidance and Ava's encouragement, I pushed through. Each shaky step I took down the parallel bars was a victory, no matter how small. A week later, Ava helped me pack my belongings for my return home. As much as I dreaded facing the house and its memories, I was eager to leave the hospital and begin the next phase of my recovery. Grace picked us up and drove us home, chatting lightheartedly to keep the mood upbeat. When we arrived, I was struck by how different the house felt. Ava and Grace had worked hard to make it comfortable, but the emptiness was palpable. Emily's absence haunted every room, a ghost of what once was. "Are you okay, Dad?" Ava asked, noticing my hesitation at the front door. "I'll be fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Let's go in." Over the next few days, I focused on settling back into a routine. Physical therapy appointments became a constant, and Ava stayed by my side, helping me regain strength. Grace visited regularly, often bringing meals and staying for dinner. One evening, as we sat around the dining table, Ava brought up something unexpected. "Dad," she began cautiously, "have you thought about selling the house?" I looked up from my plate, surprised. "Selling? Why?" "Because it doesn't feel like home anymore," she said. "And maybe it's time for a fresh start." Grace nodded in agreement. "Ava's got a point. A new place could be a clean slate for you." I considered their words carefully. They weren't wrong. The house held too many memories, both good and bad. Maybe moving on physically would help me move on emotionally. "I'll think about it," I said finally. The next morning, I made a call to a real estate agent. The process of selling the house began slowly, but it felt like the right decision. Ava helped me sort through belongings, packing up what we wanted to keep and donating what we didn't. Grace was a constant presence, offering support and laughter to lighten the mood. During one of these packing sessions, Ava found an old laptop. "Dad, I can't get into this," she said, holding it out to me. "Can you help?" I frowned, taking the laptop. "Why do you want to get into it?" "I haven't used it in years," she explained. "There might be old photos or files I want to keep." I booted it up, using a recovery tool to reset the password. As I explored the contents, something caught my eye, a familiar software icon. My stomach churned. "Ava," I asked carefully, "did you ever use this laptop to access the camera system in the house?" Her eyes widened. "What? No. Why would you even ask that?" I pointed to the icon on the screen. "This is the software for it. Whoever installed those cameras had access to this." Her expression turned from confusion to realization. "Ryan. He borrowed this laptop a few times." My jaw tightened. It made sense. Ryan had likely used the laptop to install and monitor the cameras. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, but I pushed it down. "We'll need to turn this over to the police." Ava nodded, her face pale. "I can't believe he did that." I contacted Detective Hayes immediately, explaining what we'd found on the laptop. He asked me to bring it to the precinct, so Grace drove me there the next day. Ava insisted on coming along. Detective Hayes met us in his office, and I handed over the laptop. He powered it on and opened the software, navigating through its settings. It didn't take long before he uncovered a library of recordings. Hayes's face hardened as he scrolled through the timestamps. "This confirms it," he said, his voice grim. "Ryan Carter installed the cameras." Ava shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "What's going to happen to him?" "He's already under investigation for other crimes," Hayes explained. "This adds another charge to his growing list. Between this and the other evidence we've gathered, he won't be walking free anytime soon." "What about my wife?" I asked. "Any updates on her?" Hayes hesitated. "We've located her." The room fell silent. My heart pounded. "Where is she?" "She's in a state hospital," he said carefully. "She was found in a severely malnourished and abused state about 2 months ago. It appears she was being held against her will after she fled." Ava gasped. "What?" "I'm sorry to have to tell you this," Hayes continued. But the abuse she endured, it was extensive. She's currently receiving treatment, but her mental and physical state is fragile. I struggled to process the information. Emily's betrayal had left me angry and hurt, but learning she had been a victim as well stirred complicated emotions. Can I see her? I asked. Hayes nodded. The doctors believe a familiar face might help her recovery, but I have to warn you, she's not the same person you remember. A week later, Ava and I arrived at the state hospital. Grace offered to come but respected our decision to go alone. A nurse led us to a small, brightly lit room where Emily sat in a chair by the window. Her once vibrant appearance was gone. She looked frail, her hair thin and her skin pale. Emily, I said softly as we entered. She turned to look at me, her eyes wide with a mix of recognition and fear. Andrew, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's me, I said, taking a cautious step forward. And Ava's here too. Her gaze shifted to our daughter, and tears welled up in her eyes. Ava? My baby? Ava hesitated for a moment before walking over and gently taking Emily's hand. Hi, Mom. The moment was emotional, but also bittersweet. Seeing Emily in such a vulnerable state was heartbreaking. Yet there was a sense of closure in finally understanding what had happened to her. Over the following months, we began rebuilding our lives. The house sold, and I purchased a smaller home near the city where Ava attended university. Grace moved in with me, and our relationship deepened. She had been my anchor through the storm, and I couldn't imagine life without her. Emily remained in the hospital, slowly making progress. Ava visited her often, their relationship beginning to mend. For me, forgiveness was a longer journey, but I committed to supporting her recovery for Ava's sake. Work became a refuge, and the new games our team developed were successful. Life wasn't perfect, but it was moving forward. Months turned into a year, and life continued to evolve. Grace had seamlessly become part of our lives, and what started as gratitude turned into something deeper. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, I finally worked up the courage to say what had been on my mind. Grace, I began, my voice steady but soft. You've done so much for Ava and me. I don't think I've ever properly told you how much you mean to me. She turned to look at me, her expression warm but curious. You don't need to say anything, Andrew. I'm just happy to see you and Ava finding your footing again. I reached for her hand. It's more than that. I don't think I could have gotten through any of this without you. Her eyes softened, and she gave my hand a gentle squeeze. I'll always be here for you, Andrew. In that moment, words weren't enough, and I leaned forward, letting my actions speak. Our first kiss was tender and unhurried, a promise of a future that neither of us had expected but both welcomed. Emily's progress was slow but steady. She had begun to engage more with the therapists and occasionally smiled during Ava's visits. I maintained a cautious distance, knowing that my presence brought mixed emotions for both of us. Still, I ensured she had the resources and care she needed. Ava often shared updates about her mother. She's doing better, Dad, she said one afternoon. I even got her to laugh today. That's good, I replied, genuinely happy for Ava. You're doing something amazing for her. She's my mom, Ava said simply. I can't just give up on her. Her resilience never ceased to amaze me. Watching her juggle university, her budding career, and her relationship with her mother made me prouder than I could express. Grace and I grew closer, our relationship becoming a source of comfort and joy. Ava supported us wholeheartedly, often joking that we were a power couple. The dynamic of our little family changed, but it felt natural, like the pieces had finally fallen into place. Work at our independent game studio flourished. Our second game launched to critical acclaim, and the company expanded, allowing us to hire more talented individuals. Ava joined us part-time through her university's co-op program, quickly proving she had inherited both her parents' technical talent and creativity. We moved into a new home, a bright, welcoming space that felt like a true, fresh start. It had a small garden where Grace and Ava planted flowers, a home office where I could work on new projects, and enough room for the life we were building together. One day, a letter arrived for me from Emily. The neat handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable, and my chest tightened as I opened it. Inside, her words were raw and heartfelt. Andrew, I don't know if I have the right to ask for your forgiveness, but I want you to know how sorry I am for everything, for betraying you, for not being there for Ava when she needed me, for everything that led to the night you were hurt. I was blinded by my own insecurities and manipulated by someone who saw my weaknesses. But none of that excuses what I did. You didn't deserve any of it. I hope, in time, you can find peace, even if you can't forgive me. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be a better person, for Ava and for you. Emily, I folded the letter carefully, setting it aside. Forgiveness wouldn't come easily, but her words were a start. Life was far from perfect, but it was moving forward. Ava was thriving, Grace and I were happy, and our game studio was growing. Emily remained in treatment, but there was hope for her future too. As I stood in our garden one evening, watching Ava and Grace laugh together over some inside joke, I felt a deep sense of contentment. The journey had been long and painful, but in the end, we had found something worth holding on to, a second chance at happiness. The years that followed were marked by milestones, big and small. Ava graduated from university with honors and immediately joined our studio full-time. Her technical skills and fresh perspective brought a new energy to the team. Watching her grow into a confident, capable woman was one of the greatest joys of my life. Grace and I took our relationship to the next level, quietly marrying in a small ceremony. Ava was our only witness, and that's exactly how we wanted it. A celebration of the life we had built together, free from the weight of the past. Emily remained in the care of the state hospital, but her progress continued. She had begun participating in group therapy and engaging with activities that brought her a semblance of normalcy. While I couldn't forget the pain she had caused, I found myself wishing her peace. Ava's unwavering dedication to her mother softened my own resentment over time. Our studio flourished, expanding to new heights. Our games were celebrated for their innovation and storytelling, earning us recognition in the gaming industry. We moved into a larger office space, and our team grew to include some of the brightest talents in the field. Ava took on a leadership role, managing projects with a skill that impressed even seasoned veterans. During one particularly memorable awards ceremony, Ava stood on stage to accept an accolade for our latest game. As she delivered her acceptance speech, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we had come, from the darkest days of betrayal and recovery to this moment of triumph. 5 years after she was admitted, Emily was deemed stable enough to transition to a supported living facility. Ava helped coordinate the move, ensuring her mother was comfortable and had access to everything she needed. "I want her to be okay, Dad," Ava said one evening as we sat on the porch. "I know she'll never be the same, but she deserves a chance to heal." "She does," I agreed, surprising even myself with the sincerity of my words. "And so do you. You've done so much for her, Ava. She's lucky to have you." "I learned that from you," she replied, giving me a small smile. One sunny afternoon, we gathered at our home for a barbecue, a rare moment when everyone was together. Emily sat quietly in the shade, watching as Ava and Grace played with the kids from our extended family. The sound of laughter filled the air, a testament to the healing we had all experienced. At one point, Emily approached me hesitantly. "Andrew," she began, her voice soft, "I just wanted to say, thank you for everything." I nodded, offering her a small but genuine smile. "You're welcome, Emily. I hope you find peace." She blinked back tears but didn't press further. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was enough. As the sun set on the day, I stood with Grace, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. Ava joined us, wrapping an arm around each of us. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said. "We have," I replied, my heart full, "and I wouldn't trade any of it." Grace smiled up at me, her eyes filled with love. "Here's to the future." "To the future," Ava and I echoed, and for the first time in years, I felt truly whole. With the family in a better place, I began exploring new ways to give back. Inspired by my journey through the gaming industry and the challenges I had faced, I decided to mentor aspiring developers. Grace and I started a nonprofit organization, Pixel Futures, aimed at providing scholarships and resources to underrepresented individuals in the tech world. Ava took a leading role in the initiative, organizing workshops and outreach programs that empowered young people to chase their dreams. Watching her stand before a room of eager students, sharing her knowledge and experiences, filled me with pride. Our studio continued to thrive, launching projects that not only pushed the boundaries of creativity, but also reflected the diverse voices we championed. Ava, now a lead designer, was instrumental in crafting narratives that resonated deeply with players around the world. Emily found a sense of purpose in her supported living community. She started volunteering at a local library, helping with literacy programs and organizing events. Ava visited her regularly, sharing stories about work, friends, and the family. Over time, their bond strengthened, marked by mutual respect and understanding. One day, Ava came to me with an idea. "Dad, what if we helped Mom create something? A way for her to channel everything she's been through." "What did you have in mind?" I asked, curious. "A memoir, maybe," Ava suggested, "or even just a personal project. Something that's hers." It was a good idea. Emily's journey was one of pain but also resilience. When Ava brought it up to her, Emily hesitated at first but eventually embraced the idea. With Ava's support, she began writing about her experiences, hoping her story might help others in similar situations. Grace and I celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary with a small gathering of friends and family. Ava surprised us with a video montage of our journey together, complete with old photos and heartfelt messages from the people whose lives we had touched. "You've built something amazing, Dad," Ava said after the video played. "Not just at work, but here with us." Her words moved me deeply. Despite the hardships, I realized we had created a life filled with love, laughter, and purpose. A few years later, Ava announced she was engaged. Her partner, Jordan, was a fellow game developer she had met through our studio. Their shared passion for creativity and innovation brought them together, and their love was evident to everyone who knew them. The wedding was a joyous occasion, held in the garden of our home. Emily, by then in a much better place mentally and physically, walked Ava down the aisle alongside me. It was a moment of unity, healing, and celebration. After the wedding, Ava and Jordan announced their plans to start a new studio together. Grace and I offered our full support, proud to see Ava embarking on a path that was uniquely hers. As the years passed, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Grace and I continued our work with Pixel Futures, mentoring the next generation of developers. Ava and Jordan's studio became a success, known for its groundbreaking games and inclusive practices. Emily completed her memoir, titled Through the Shadows, which was published to critical acclaim. Her story resonated with readers, offering a raw and honest look at survival, redemption, and the power of family. One day, as I sat in my garden, watching Grace tend to the flowers and Ava play with her young son, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The road we had traveled had been long and often painful, but it had led us to a place of peace and fulfillment. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for that, I was eternally thankful. Ava and Jordan welcomed their first child a year after their wedding, a boy named Samuel. The birth brought new joy to our lives, filling the house with laughter and the sounds of tiny feet. Grace and I became doting grandparents, eagerly volunteering for babysitting duties whenever Ava needed a break. Watching Ava navigate parenthood with the same determination and grace she had shown in her professional life filled me with pride. Samuel was a curious and energetic child, often sitting in my lap as I worked on new game concepts or helping Grace in the garden. 2 years later, Ava and Jordan welcomed their second child, a daughter named Clara. With Samuel now a protective big brother, the family grew even closer. Emily, who had gradually integrated more into our lives, delighted in her role as a grandmother. Though she remained cautious in social settings, her bond with Samuel and Clara was undeniable. Ava and Jordan's studio, Visioncraft, became a powerhouse in the gaming industry. Their projects focused on immersive storytelling and innovative mechanics, earning accolades and breaking sales records. What set Visioncraft apart, however, was its commitment to diversity and inclusion, values instilled by Ava's experiences and our family's journey. Grace and I often collaborated with Visioncraft through Pixel Futures, providing mentorship and resources to help them grow. Their success was a testament to Ava's resilience and creativity, and I couldn't have been prouder. Years later, while cleaning out some old boxes, I stumbled upon a dusty journal I had kept during the early days of my career. Flipping through its pages, I found sketches of the first game I had ever worked on and notes about the late nights, the stress, and the excitement of seeing an idea come to life. I smiled, realizing how far I had come. From a young developer trying to make a name for himself to a father and grandfather with a life full of love and purpose. The journal reminded me of the passion that had driven me to create, a passion I now saw reflected in Ava and Jordan's work. That evening, I shared the journal with Grace and Ava. We laughed at my old notes, marveled at how the industry had changed, and reflected on the legacy we had built together as the years passed. Grace and I found joy in the quiet moments of life. Walks in the garden, Samuel and Clara's visits, and the occasional trip to the mountains became our cherished routines. Emily continued to thrive in her supported living community, finding new ways to engage with the world and sharing her story with others. Ava and Jordan's studio grew into a multi-generational team, inspiring young developers and pushing the boundaries of what games could achieve. Their success was a reflection of the values we had worked hard to instill, a commitment to creativity, empathy, and community. One summer evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Grace and I sat on the porch, watching Samuel and Clara chase fireflies in the yard. Ava and Jordan joined us, laughing and sharing stories about their latest projects. Emily sat quietly nearby, a peaceful smile on her face. "It's been quite a journey," Grace said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "It has," I agreed, taking her hand in mine, "and I wouldn't change a thing." As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I felt a profound sense of contentment. The road had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had led us to a place of love, unity, and hope, a legacy that would endure through the lives we had touched and the family we had built. Years turned into decades, and our family continued to grow and thrive. Samuel and Clara inherited the same spark of curiosity and creativity that had defined our family. Samuel pursued engineering, often calling me for advice on the mechanics of game development, while Clara found her passion in art, contributing stunning visuals to VisionCraft's projects. Grace and I eased into retirement, though I occasionally offered consulting on game design and Grace remained active in Pixel Futures. Our days were filled with joy and the simple pleasures of family life, watching the grandchildren play, attending Ava's studio events, and cherishing quiet evenings in the garden. When Grace passed peacefully in her sleep one autumn night, the world felt a little dimmer. Her loss left a void in our lives, but her memory and the love she gave us became the foundation we leaned on to move forward. Ava, ever the pillar of strength, ensured I was never alone, spending more time at home and bringing Samuel and Clara to visit often. I found solace in writing, a memoir of my life, tracing the ups and downs, the triumphs and heartbreaks. Emily, who had long since become a steady presence in our family, encouraged me to share it, just as she had done with her own story. I titled it Through the Code: A Journey of Love, Loss, and Resilience. The process of writing brought clarity and closure, allowing me to reflect on a life that, despite its hardships, had been full of meaning. On my 85th birthday, the entire family gathered at Ava and Jordan's home, a sprawling yet welcoming house that doubled as a creative hub for VisionCraft. Surrounded by my children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Ava stood to give a toast. "Dad, you've been our anchor, our inspiration, and our guide. Everything we've built, this family, this studio, this life, is because of your love and perseverance. Thank you for everything." Tears filled my eyes as I looked around the room. It was more than I could have ever dreamed of. A family bound by love, a legacy of creativity and compassion, and a future full of hope. In the twilight of my life, I often found myself sitting on the same porch where Grace and I had spent so many evenings. The garden she had nurtured was now in full bloom, tended lovingly by Clara. The laughter of my great-grandchildren echoed in the distance, a testament to the enduring bond of our family. Looking back, I realized that life had not been defined by the moments of pain or betrayal, but by the resilience to overcome them and the love that had carried us through. Grace, Ava, Emily, and everyone who had touched my life had been part of a story that was as complex and beautiful as any game I'd ever created. And as the sun set one final time, I closed my eyes, content in the knowledge that my legacy would live on in the family and the dreams we had built together.